So, you know, audience buying, big data, data-driven marketing. A lot of people probably out there think these are just buzzwords for people to sell more products to you guys. I mean, aren't we always using data? Aren't we always going after audiences? I mean, for decades, even TV buyers looked at research and tried to figure out where their audience is on TV, what programs they're watching, and better to inform them on what programs to buy, where to place their advertising. Out-of-home buyers, they know where the byways and highways are of their target demo in order to put the billboard in the right space. All you digital buyers out there, got plenty of tools telling you where to go, who to buy from. But the notion I'd like to put out there for you guys is that's marketing using data, insights, to buy better, to evaluate better. Truly what data-driven marketing is, and what I want you guys to all walk away with here is getting the user data front and center to everything you do. Stop thinking about audience buying as a channel, products from DSPs and trading desks that should be segmented away from everything you're doing. And in fact, use audience data at the very heart of all the layers that you're doing. These four gentlemen are shaping this industry, shaping the way that data-driven marketing is going to be done today and over the next, arguably, 10 years, maybe longer. This panel of these companies and these gentlemen, at any other data conference, it would be the keynote panel. So I'd like to give you, if you guys give them a warm welcome, iMedia welcome. You guys are going to go be able to hear about how data-driven marketing is being seen from the social, local, and mobile channels. You're going to be able to go back to your organizations and be even smarter than some of the folks at your trading desks. Because this is a topic that really hasn't been talked about a lot. Audience buying in terms of the fixed web, these gentlemen have spent tens of thousands of hours on panels and conferences speaking of this. But I think what can be done with social, what can be done with mobile, what can be done with local, with data-driven marketing, it should be really interesting to you guys. So we should have a pretty nice little half hour here. I'm going to start with having each of these gentlemen introduce themselves, their companies, and where they play in this space and how they can help you guys better in your marketplace using data, big data, audience buying. George?
Hi, I'm George John, the founder and CEO of Rocket Fuel. My personal adventure went from teaching computer science classes to teaching robots to behave autonomously to hedge funds, and then finally marketing because it was just more fun than the others. And at Rocket Fuel, we kind of aspire to be the nerds who help the cool people in marketing do a good job. So we work with companies primarily through their agencies, like a publisher, AdNet, managed service DSP. We want to understand your objectives, get your budget, and make you happy by making everything happen that you wanted with the buy across traditional display, video, social, and mobile.
Omar?
Hi, my name is Omar Talco. I'm the CEO of Blue Kai. Think of us as the data activation company. Our goal is to become the Switzerland where we can get all the data assets you need from your own internal enterprise, online, offline, across channels into one place so that you can activate, as Josh was saying, that data across everything you do, not just display, but display and video and site optimization and email and analytics, and making it front and center of driving everything by keeping your data separate from your execution strategies by having one platform. So that's what Blue Kai does.
I'm Kurt Unkel from Viviki Nerve Center. I'm the president of it, contrary to the slide. But dynamic space, things change a lot. But the Nerve Center basically within Viviki is the R&D center for the broader Viviki structure, that being all our media holding, the media companies within Publicis. And so really focused on incubating sort of the next generation practices and technologies that are going to kind of power us into media buying and all aspects related to advertising and technology in the future. And so really focusing on how do we take these new ideas and incorporate them into broader things that over time will just inherently be part of our core DNA at the agency level.
And Jay?
I'm Jay Sears. I'm the SVP of demand for the Rubicon project. We're on the sell side, so we have an ad technology platform for top ComScore 500 publishers around the world. They put their ad inventory into that platform, and we conduct a real-time trading auction out to ad networks, DSPs, and agency trading desks. So people like George and Kurt come on and participate in that auction. And through that auction, the publishers have controlled access to over 70,000 advertisers.
Excellent, excellent. So before we get into the actual social, mobile, local aspect of audience buying and data-driven marketing, what's one or two things that you guys feel that the audience should really know about the state of audience buying today? You know, what are the common misperceptions you'd like to knock out? What are some of the things that, you know, in terms of moving away from just products and really bringing data-driven marketing as the center of your universe?
Oh, I would love to take a crack. Yesterday, I kind of wanted to rant a little bit. Yesterday, somebody up here talked about the testing treadmill as if testing is a bad thing. I mean, picture scientists, instead of actually inventing vaccines, just being sad about the science slog or something. And isn't it hard to discover new drugs and stuff? But I think this is the engine that has driven all human achievement since the Dark Ages, right? You observe carefully, you test things, you find out what's true. Secondarily, you need to be able to persuade people of what's true, and that's, I think, what we enjoy about all this stuff. But I think there's a lot about data where I think people have tried it initially, both on display and even on Facebook. You know, it seems so rich, all the data out there. But I think what we see as the pattern of success is experimenting with strategies, learning things, and getting smarter versus just assuming that kind of whatever your first guess was would be accurate.
Jay, state of big data. Where are we at today with big data? 2012 buzzword.
I think to some extent data's always been used in marketing, but it used to come bundled up, and it used to come with very few controls around it. And we could also talk about the efficacy of the data, how reliable that data was. So the big transformation happening today is all this is unbundled, and all this happens in real time, and all this happens at the impression level, right? So a company like Rubicon can bring a piece of media, can bring data from the publisher, but there are also other pieces of data that somebody like Kurt or George can source through BlueKai or other sources to come together literally at the second the user is on the web or on a mobile device to make a decision. So that's pretty transformative. That said, we're still in the early days of that working properly. Last fall, I wrote something called the Smart Pipe Manifesto, and I think what you have is, if you look at some of the charts about our ecosystem, the companies in their own right, so the trading desk or the data company or the SSP or the DSP or the ad network, enormously sophisticated ad technology. We need to get a lot better at conveying value from the publisher side, where the user is, through to the advertiser side, who wants to have that conversation with the user. And again, we're just in early days there, and there are a lot of things that have to go on, both through industry standards and active collaboration between all the companies up here to increase the impact of what it is we're doing.
Go on.
I was going to say, just piling on to some of that, I mean, from a kind of the core focus of what we do in the Nerve Center, this idea around, and I think it's something that resonates for everybody, whether you come from a data world or a media world, but this idea of what's signal, what's noise, it really resonates in the data side. But even as being a media buyer for the longest time, we got really good about figuring out who's full of it, who's not full of it. So who's got signal, who's got noise, and we just kind of see kind of a focus from what our core. Sorry, totally trailed off there. But the idea of like this is really what we as agencies need to start getting really good at. Like, how do I just know what signal, what is noise? How am I doing that? The data front. How am I doing that in the technology front? How am I going to do that in the media front? And so when you get down to like, what do I need to, as an agency, be thinking about as I kind of move off into this new space of evaluating that? And that's really kind of a focus on from a talent side. Philosophically, how do we evaluate what is signal noise? From a process standpoint, how do we kind of have inherently in the organization a kind of approach to navigating that? And on the flip side, as you get into a lot more of this data and managing it, how am I going to have that infrastructure just to simply take all that on? And so, again, from the center, from the Nerve Center, we're really focused on building out that. But as we work with our teams and we work with folks who are always asking for that advice, it's really asking yourself, do you have that ability to discern what is signal and noise, and you have basically the infrastructure to sustain it and to kind of scale out on top of it?
So, I think that this has been a very technology-focused channel for the last couple of years. It's been growing. And a way that I've been using to talk to the media planners at my agency that traditionally 5 years ago only had to worry about search, banner, and email, you know, a lot of them are segmenting it off to their DSP partners or to their trading desks. They're not really able to get their hands into the data. What I've been saying is, the way I believe it, 2 years from now, you're not going to be buying 50 million impressions from an ad network or 100 million impressions from a direct publisher. You're going to be buying 50 million impressions against a set of audience segments. You know, why buy a blunt instrument of 50 million impressions when you could buy at scale one and evaluate each impression at a time to make sure that you're passing on the users that you know probably aren't going to resonate with your message, and really cherry pick and make sure that you're getting those 50 million impressions out of a pool of billions of impressions, the right needle in the haystack that really can help, you know, resonate with your clients. And so I turned to Omar here. What kinds of data can you tell to the media planners could they be using to really figure out who are their best clients?
Yeah, so it's really funnel dependent, which is, are you doing something that's really lower funnel where you know this person's about to convert? Are you doing something where this is a past transactor, so they've shown evidence that they're going to transact again, but maybe not just immediately now? Are you doing something that tells you this is the, you know, prime target from you from a branding perspective, because you looked at the lower conversions and see who converted and you see who you should go after, but they're not ready yet because they haven't shown any signal. So you have to be very sensitive to where you are in the funnel. But even with all of that, if you have real good clarity on this is social data versus this is retargeting data, the problem that Kurt mentioned, which is important, is separating the signal from the noise, which is data is an invisible asset. Whenever you have an invisible asset, every bullshit artist is going to come out of the woodworks and say they have a version of it because it's invisible. And so what you need is an ability to actually tell whether something is good or not by tying it to some sort of action or activity that and analytics, and that's why he kept on saying signal to noise. It's one of the biggest things happening this year is being able to bounce all these data assets at some good metric of conversion or engagement for you to understand if it's good or bad, and it's dynamic.
So let's start diving into the topic du jour, social, local, mobile. So, gentlemen, a lot of these folks have read and heard about audience buying at scale on the fixed web. What can they do? And let's start with the SO in social and SoLoMo. What's social? How should a data-driven marketer, how should these folks be looking to the future to bring data into the equation for social marketing? What can be done in the social sphere?
Yeah, so with social, it was interesting last week with GM saying very publicly that they decided Facebook didn't work for them. And I think in social it's interesting because there's social data and there's social objectives and social ad space or inventory, right? I think it's interesting. A lot of people, as they've explored social, they've kind of put all these three together into some what seemed like a really cool test or campaign to run. And I think in the end on social, I guess we're most satisfied with customers that aren't just trying to drive likes, but they're trying to use social inventory and social data to drive whatever the real objective was for their company. And what we find is that, there's again, a really big difference between just sitting in your chair and just making your best guess of, Facebook is actually kind of weirdly alluring, right? If you sat down in front of that ad API at Facebook, it's amazing, it's majestic, just all the things that Facebook knows about people that they just reveal on their profile and through their actions. And you feel really powerful, but in the end, you're really still just guessing if you're just sitting there in your chair and kind of constructing a campaign versus using a technology that can optimize and just continuously be saying, where is it working, where is it not, I'll shift more budget to what's working. So I think on social, at least for us, we're kind of just rational creatures. We want people to have an objective, like we've been saying, what's signal, what's noise, and just optimize towards that. And within that, I think it's, all this data that people can reveal about themselves in social profiles is very useful. I put in a vignette on social graph data. I don't know what everybody else's experience is, but in my experience, it's kind of hit and miss. For what kind of products are you buying at the same time as your friends versus not, right? And so it tends to be fairly specific, the kind of products that really seem to benefit from social network and neighborhood data versus just the other kind of data that people naturally reveal in registration profiles.
I think you had a good point on social as a word is like digital as a word. People are like, what's your digital strategy? Well, all right, there's a lot of stuff inside digital, so let's get down to the specifics. And we talk about social, we talk about paid, we talking about owned, we talking about earned, and ultimately what's that execution? I think tying it back to sort of a data question, the idea that there's a lot of really good signal inside social, but there's also, to Omar's point, there's a lot of bullshit artists out there today too that are bringing in something that's kind of framed up as social, and there's there's little bits and pieces there. I don't think, the wealth that we can get at inside of Facebook, probably 12 months from now might be an entirely different conversation, especially now that they're public. There's gonna be different types of pressures on them. I think that's gonna create some interesting news over the coming months as to how they kind of connect a lot of that data to data that might be actionable outside of their ecosystem. But it's certainly conceptually very attractive, the idea that I could find friends of a friend's, or birds of a feather kind of flock together, conceptual thing for targeting that, to George's point, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think that's really important for everyone to understand. Again, back to signal and noise, there aren't really any probably truths yet uncovered that are globally applicable to everybody.
And I think, in the pre-call that I had with these guys for the session, I've really got a sense that, these channels, social, mobile, local, are all things that are just inventory sources, data sources that can be used with each other. If you're trying to sell mobile products, it might be best to do it on a social platform. If you're trying to sell local, it might actually be better to do it in a social platform, so forth and so on. What about privacy concerns in this area? Anyone want to touch that subject with a 10-foot pole?
I think the lawsuits going on right now with Facebook on the stories kind of ads, and those are starting to pop up more often. There's certainly going to be a consumer reaction phase here that you got to be slow and smart on. At the same time, I don't think people should be inherently distrustful of everything that goes on there. We're gonna find new social mores as it relates to, from a social data standpoint, what are people comfortable with? I think the industry has an opportunity to innovate in this and really look at how does the consumer actually benefit from sharing their data, not just getting more targeted ads, but financially, are there other ideas out there that I think will inherently kind of push us more quickly to a place where data is more readily shared, especially that which people feel they have control on, but it's obviously a very big point today.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity, I don't know if it's this year or in 5 years, for there to be an agency for the consumer, which is some entity that's helping you manage your data and get points, free content, maybe even money. And that's interesting. But going back to the value of social, just at the time when GM made the statement publicly about what it was doing with Facebook, another one of our clients was running a bunch of social campaigns and then using data from the external world outside of the social enterprise to judge, are they reaching the right people? Where are they in the funnel? And how are different age groups and different segments reacting differently to their social campaign? And they were seeing some really good success. Last thing I'll say is the point you said about the social graph that is really interesting to me is if you really look at it just practically, if I know that you like a hotel somewhere in Michigan and the ad comes to me and it says Kurt likes it, that tells me something. In your case, it tells me something good. In other cases, maybe not. The problem is if I get the ad, but it doesn't say your name on it, it's not as effective. People talk about the social graph. It's kind of good to get it because your friends got it, but it's vastly more effective if you know which friend is endorsing it. So when you separate out the social graph from the knowledge of who it is recommending, I think you diminish its power by a lot.
Well, let's move on to mobile then. Mobile has an interesting challenge. A lot of marketers maybe, get excited about audience buying and then they try to push their dollars to mobile and find out you can't do everything that you'd like to do on the mobile device. So where are we today with mobile in terms of the data-driven marketing? What can these folks look forward to soon in the future? Jay, you want to tackle?
Yeah, I could start. So across Rubicon, we see 150 billion ads a month, and about 7% of that is people looking at the web through their mobile device. And there's over 2 billion iPad impressions, and we think about our job as an enabler. So, what can we enable with that? You have a lot of specialty buyers in the market. I saw TapAd is speaking this afternoon in Mobi, other people on the buy side, as well as people that are going cross-platform and operating across both display and mobile, say like a Rocket Fuel or a Data Zoo. And a couple things we're thinking about when we think about mobile at Rubicon, which is, what makes this kind of still a little difficult. So how is the mobile ad experience? How can we make it better? How can we produce mobile ads more easily? There have been a lot of difficulties about turnkey ways to build mobile ads, build mobile landing pages. I think you'll see a lot of innovation on the pricing models around mobile. I think especially as you look at mobile in the SoLoMo context, you can also talk about it as almost SoLoMo commerce, promotion, and we're going to get beyond that CPM pricing model. And I think a lot of our partners in the network and the DSP and the trading desk space are thinking about how to drive that. And then, we're just thinking kind of how do we enable those guys?
George John, mobile for your clients?
I think, I don't know, I would be confused if I were a media buyer and planner. I think, it's weird and unfortunate that every time there's a new innovation in advertising, there's like 20 companies that are specialists in that one thing, and you have them telling you you should really spend more money and time on that. And then everybody's got these little silos, and there's the contextual targeting guys and the behavioral targeting guys. And I think really, you should know what it means to be successful, and then just do that, right? So our approach is really to run these things cross-channel, where we can do just kind of bottom-up optimization. If the next best impression to buy for a campaign is on a mobile device, we'll buy that one. If the next best one is on a social site, we'll buy that one. And so I think the missing link is just how powerful that is in letting sort of almost the media mix optimization just emerge from impression by impression, just highly selective robots buying campaign for your one impression at a time. That's very powerful versus just sitting in a planning phase thinking, well, we'll do 450K on display, 300K video, 200K mobile, and 100K social or something like that. So when we look at it, I guess we really want to look at it as an element of an overall portfolio. Within that, I think it's a challenging thing to optimize because you can't use all the features that you can on display. I think we've all been spoiled by just the weird foresight that the architects of the web had to make advertising just lovely. But still, I mean, if you can still build an engine that's still trying to do the best that it can, and you can still balance that against other engines that are looking at other channels.
I think this is kind of one of the key takeaways for the data-driven marketing approach, and how you guys might want to look at this moving forward. Break down those channels. I mean, like George John said, if the next impression that's best for you to buy is a video impression, is a mobile impression, is a social impression, then that's the one you buy. You don't segment your budget beforehand in these channels just because the clients are leading you in the directions, what's our mobile strategy, what's our social strategy. When data is the central kind of prism for how you buy and how you plan and how you execute, how you measure, it becomes very easy and clear to understand where the best impressions are, how do you re-message to those folks. I mean, Kurt, you have so many marketers and agencies looking to you for that data-driven approach. What are you telling them about these channels?
I mean, the approach we have is really one about addressability. The idea is that I really want to speak to individuals, and whether I see them in a mobile application, whether I see them in a display ad, I see them in video, or even as we can find ways to get television into the fray. This is ultimately more about ultimately two main strategies that exist in advertising. We're either building these large experiences where we're trying to get people to come and experience it, and that's going to be one side of the house, and the other side is the addressable piece, where I'm defining an audience. I want to define them once. I want to define them with like a common set of criteria, a set of insights that's at scale and actionable across all these channels, and then push it out there, and ultimately look at each one of these channels as optimization levers, as opposed to to your point, carving out budget for everything, and next thing I know, well, what if mobile's working really well in real time? I have to go back and ask permission to move it from A to B, or I've got them all on like 6 different platforms, and I can't even have signal from this thing inform this piece. So, for us, it's really been about that focus on consolidation to at least from a technology standpoint, a common place so you can really activate all this type of stuff. Or if it's not a common place, at least have the operational chops to integrate these things, to put it in a place where we can have all that.
And that leads us to local, which has been a great some kind of secret sauce for marketers for decades, right? Now you can get relevance. Even in Kenny's presentation, he was talking about Sears was sending out individual messaging based on region, whatever kind of verbiage would kind of resonate best with those. So from a local perspective, and digital is great for local. I mean, we can, with the geo-targeting and being able to do all these things, data-driven marketing at the local level. Omar, I mean, what kind of data points, is local really that important? Is it better to look at, when your technologies can look at thousands of attributes on a single user, or hundreds of attributes on a single user, does it really matter that much if someone's in California or someone's in Florida, when in fact they share more attributes and more commonalities than just where they live?
Yeah, I mean, the best place we've seen local used is in customizing creative. So you're a hotel chain, and you know that you can put a message that says, I have rates for this room in Chicago now. So they're using behavioral intent to say you're in market for a hotel, and that's national. But once they applied that kind of localization to it, the results become a lot better. Of course, you're trading off volume, but if you're able to do a different creative in different locations all over the country, the volume ends up adding up, and it becomes very effective.
Georgian, weren't you telling me about a campaign that started where the market had been very successful at their local approach, but ultimately when they went national using local data, it actually worked better?
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you've pattern matched on the things I say, you'll know what I'm about to say, which is it's all about just seeing what works. We were working with an upscale department store, and they wanted to run campaigns pretty tight just around where their stores were. And that was their guess as to what would work. But the campaign was promoting their online store, and we thought, well, why would it be only the people near your physical store that would shop online? So we got them to release us from that constraint, and then, of course, the data always tells you what's real, right? So really it was people outside this radius around their stores who were actually easier targets for the online ad and a higher return on ad spend. So this sort of theme of you never know really comes up a lot. And it's not that there aren't wins of people saying, I know this brand, I know, here's a segment of users, here's a contextual segment that tends to generate responses. I mean, there's certainly like a lot of learnings like that are true and valid and help to start a campaign with that. But then there's just a lot of stuff as well where you really just still want to question it and run the experiment.
So the last couple minutes here, I want to talk about, some of the quote-unquote dirty little secrets in audience buying. I think a lot of people have kind of been turned off by what they've heard, what this is. I mean, hopefully you've kind of taken from this session that it's not about products, it's not about all these other business things, it's really trying to get the most out of your marketing and how data can really inform you on that. And so, one of the kind of hot button topics of the day is that agencies are trying to selling this into clients so they can mark it up and do all sorts of things. Kurt? Would you like to address?
Sure. I mean, I think it's an interesting argument that goes on out there. Like the biggest piece of advice we always can give is like clients should just ask questions. I mean, if you can't answer the question, then there's something probably going on there. Personally, from my background, I think it was 2000. If anybody remembers the Firestone tire recall, Ford had a little bit of an issue with Firestone tires blowing out, and so we were actually kind of an ATM in Detroit. If you had inventory, we were buying it. We weren't really looking. We're just pounding this thing out there. And the day that I got a screen grab, or actually an email from somebody that said, go to fuckedcompany.com. If anybody remembers, that's like a Deadpool of the opposite of up and upcoming IPOs. It was companies are basically going out. Our ad's sitting there on the top of the page, which was contextually relevant, I guess. But at the same time, infuriating to kind of see that, and that idea of not knowing where my ads was going to go has been, for me personally, something, as a media buyer, it's always been frustrating. And so as basically the technology space kind of grew up, and we had this sort of opportunity to sit first seat in the exchanges and really get our hands into the optimizations, get our hands into the insights, get our hands into the choices around media, it invariably led to kind of a new set of services. And when we first launched Audience on Demand, 2008, I remember actually handing the instructions off to a buying team on what to do. And about a week later, having every one of them wanting to kill me, that I just made their job inherently far more complicated. And so for us, at least, I can speak to them from a Viviki perspective, that backstory grew into a new set of services, a new set of scope that led to a lot of new services that we could provide to clients. And as a result, obviously we charge for that. And I think it's a lot about bringing back in-house things that we might have traditionally outsourced. That's not to say that everybody that operates in sort of the secondary market is inherently flawed in what we want to put out of business, but it's something that we as an organization feel that if we're going to be good at data-driven buying, we've got to make an investment, we've got to build a practice, we've got to build expertise, and so for us in Audience on Demand, that's been what we've been doing. And when I look out 3 years, 5 years, today we have 90 plus people in there. So if somebody says we're double dipping, what does that mean? I don't, if you certainly are an organization that gets an IO and just mark it up and pass it along to somebody else to do the work, I could totally see that argument. We've got a lot of people that are focused on this piece, and for that reason, I feel like it's just a shortcut to thinking when people call it that.
So we got 1 minute left. I just want to quickly go down the line here. So for my friends and colleagues that maybe aren't platform specialists and technology, that have a lot of experience in marketing and building brands and really great client service, and they've really been farming some of this out to their technology teams. They're really trying to wrap their heads around it so that they can really be front and center and start stewarding those dollars in a more audience-centric way. I mean, what can you tell them, briefly, that can help them get to the next level? Omar, why don't you start?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is put data in the context of everything that you're doing right now. In other words, it's not just a tactic for a signal segment. There's an offering actually we're releasing today with Viviki, which is take every impression you run, even if it's not audience targeted, on every medium and run it through an audience system so that you can see all the data pop and understand what's working and what's not, and stop having an on-off switch that said the campaign worked, the campaign didn't work, and move to, well, it worked for this set of audiences against this creative in these placements. And then you can start to refine your strategy. But the main thing is make sure you use your data to light up everything you're doing today so it's in the context of your current workflow.
George-Jean, what would you like to tell these folks?
Boy, I think two things. One is it's funny in the context of social. You guys should talk to each other more often. It's funny. We actually thought starting this business, you make one team happy in an agency and they'll just tell all their friends, and that never happens. You have to ride the elevator up and down the Starcom building to tell them yourself about the success you drive. So I would say we do have a number of smaller agencies that do seem to kind of share best practices more. So that would definitely be one, because I'm sure in any of your agencies, I mean, you've had teams that have tried pretty avant-garde stuff and have assembled some learnings, and it's probably more efficient and more authentic for you to hear from them than having us talk to you. Not that I'm not happy to do that.
Jay, what's a baby step in the right direction? What do you want them to know?
Well, just expanding on what Omar was saying, I would think about data and how data is applied to planning, how it's applied to buying and real-time buying and valuation and creative, and then also to the insights. What did you learn, and what does that cycle look like? And relating this back to SoLoMo, I think another interesting exercise, Kurt talked a little bit about paid, owned, and earned. And I would do an XY axis, paid, owned, and earned in SoLoMo, and fill in the boxes just with a couple companies maybe that are relevant, and track those companies. Track what Facebook is going to be doing on mobile, very, very interesting. Track a local New York company called Place IQ that's doing very, very interesting hyper-local geographic targeting. And I think by doing that, you'll get to the critical questions that you need to ask yourself and vendors coming to talk to you and your customers.
Kurt, without having them pivot their entire career away from what they've been doing all these years and now to a data-driven approach, what can they do today, tomorrow, the next year to really start getting savvy on this channel?
Yeah, I think one of the big things we made an investment in was around operations. If your operations team is a person who deals with billing, you probably have a problem. And so it's really to go back and look at that application of technology to your everything you're doing, and to what Omar was referencing about kind of relationship we've been building out and creating a platform by which we can actually scale up a lot of insights across not only programs we work together on, but just everything, right? This idea that I want to have data center to every piece, and also to make that happen, to make something actionable, you want to have that infrastructure, that investment in a few folks that can really help you go there. And so from an agency standpoint, it's going back and saying, what is my operations team doing? If they're not sitting at the table when you're doing strategy, that's a big sign that you probably have an issue, and it's probably an area where you can go back and really focus on bringing some of those resources in, and from there, get yourself set for the future of data-driven buying.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We've got a little time for some questions.
So we'll do some questions. I'll throw the first one out because I'll wait for hands to come up. But so all incredible companies, you guys are making great traction, but so much of what you guys are talking about sounds scientific and robotic as it relates to advertising. If I was an agency person, it doesn't sound fun and creative. I didn't really hear people and people's experience. It feels like we've kind of moved so quickly into this new frontier, which is part of the theme of the last couple of days. So the question is, am I overthinking that question, or is data the biggest or only driver to make effective advertising? But where's I guess what I'm looking for is, where's the art and the beauty of reaching people and thinking about people beyond robots and data?
I think it's in the message. I mean, Virgin America, right? I mean, it's fun to walk onto a Virgin America plane. It's purple. But do you really want the Airbus engineers building the autopilot system to be like rocking out and missing a line of code or something? So I think there's just there's a part of it that's very personal and artistic that deals with the creative and reasoning about people and how they're going to respond to your ads. And there's data for that too, like Omar mentioned. I'm trying to figure out your responders, even if you didn't target them with data, you can still see the data and who's responding, and that gives you better ideas of it. Oh, it's those guys that are responding, right? I didn't realize it. Looking at psychographics, oh, weird, it's all bold and selfish people who buy luxury cars. Okay, well, I think that tells you something about the message you want to deliver. So I think it's a partnership really, and it sort of each has its place. And I think marketing, just because it's so fun and social, I think a lot of the parts of marketing that really are kind of scientific in nature have been a little bit less scientific than they could have been, and it'll just be better to really kind of have the again, the nerds and the fun people partner together to make that all work.
Chris, man, that's a great point, and I didn't mean to glass over that part that it's all about the numbers and science and so forth. This is just a layer to help you do those things smarter. I mean, you have to have the great message. You have to have the great people behind that. You have to have the marketing insight. But it's this kind of approach that can help you get to scale and do those things a lot better. Anyone?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, this is about defining audiences, which is what we've always done as media agencies.
Right.
And, traditionally in the past, we do an MRI run or somebody pulls something out of ComScore to find an audience and then haphazardly pray to God that when I bought all these sites, I'm going to be reaching that audience and have no sort of sense of whether I really did it or not. And so ultimately, everything we're talking about is that iterating on that, making that actually much, much more actionable, much more real, so that when I do say I'm buying this audience, that I know I'm hitting those people. And we tend to probably get too deep into performance side of it and saying, oh, it's not working or is working, as opposed to just a lot of the branding side of it, where the art is defining that audience, having a smart insight, and finding it at scale. And sometimes that's enough. And that's a piece where we probably, as digital, should focus more on. We tend to optimize to a point where TV's allowed to just keep scaling with no optimization, and we optimize all our pennies off our plans.
I think that's a really good point, your last comment. Can we get a question over here to the audience, Josh?
Yes, please.
Thanks. This is James Lamberti. I'm the managing director for AdTruth. Gentlemen, thanks for the conversation. I guess maybe I didn't hear it, but I've been really looking for a substantive, point of view from you and how you're going to deal with mobile. And more specifically, the technology is different. The cookie is not a scalable solution for you. How are you going to pivot your technologies, your companies, into mobile, especially in an area where PC will decline and mobile will continue to grow?
Omar, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I know AdTruth and what you do, and you guys have some really good technology there. In particular, the problem you have in mobile is that you have one pool where you have cookies, like Android, for instance. You can have third-party cookies, and you have very specific data that's very accurate, but not enough reach. And then you have another area where you essentially don't have third-party cookies. iOS, you can't really track across places, and you need some sort of statistical solution. And the key when you select a statistical solution is that it has to have high enough accuracy. For example, if you choose a solution that's statistical that tells you with 50% accuracy that you're a male or female, that kind of sucks because you might as well just go with it rolling a die. But there are technologies emerging out there that could take your accuracy level up to a higher level, not 100%, but close to 90%. Then you can start scaling some of the stuff that you couldn't achieve just with cookies. And there are folks like AdTruth and a few other guys who have the underlying statistical techniques, because at the end of the day, we have to have addressability in mobile, or else you can't do any targeting. And the cookie's just not going to get you to cover enough of your inventory.
Okay, we've got one more over here.
Hi, Peter Platt from P-Square Digital. I'm interested in sort of all this talk about technology, Chris bringing up the people side. Who are the people that we need to be bringing onto our teams to make this work? Because people are hiring young kids to do social because they know social. They don't know strategy. We have the old folks who know strategy and they don't know technology. What kind of people are you guys bringing into your teams, and should we be bringing into ours to make this work?
I mean, from an agency perspective, I think the folks that we found that just thrive really well are those that have sort of an entrepreneurial curiosity, just innate to them, that are going to gravitate towards some of this stuff, and also finding a way to take some of our, myself included, saltier old media types who tend to assume everybody's full of it, and kind of infuse that into them, so they've got sort of a critical eye as to what's going on. But ultimately, that's sort of just an attitudinal approach. The other piece that we've done really a lot with is just from a project management standpoint. I mean, there's just so much coming at you. How do I just make sure that I'm moving forward and we've just got sort of execution. I think in a traditional media agency, that focus was kind of absent. You know, we have a lot of stuff, heritage from DNA, from Digitas and Razorfish that infused the Viviki culture, and the project management aspect of it, I would say, has been a surprising insight that's really helped us, I think, from a staffing standpoint, move a lot of this stuff forward and really have actionable insights we can do stuff with.
Yeah, so
I was going to add, the people we look to add to our teams are the customer-facing people that can really sit down and talk to a product person on the other side of the fence, talk to an engineer, talk to an operations person. I think this is one of the biggest challenges we have in our industry, just is a kind of workforce gap in how we get from here to there. Since Rubicon does not sell directly to agencies or to advertisers, we work with networks and DSPs and trading desks, we see them dealing with the issue in different ways. So some companies are building managed service teams that will do that for you if you're an agency, and other ones are going the route of self-service platforms and providing training and going in and training your teams, are just doing a mix of both of those, and I think because those exist, it's just indicative of what we're talking about, this transformation going on.
Josh, we got time for one more question here.
Great.
How's it going? Adam Davis, co-founder of Blue Crisp Digital. My question is as follows. So, you know, I hear a lot about data. I came from a really big agency, which was just, you know, very focused on data. My question specifically is, which role within the confines of an agency do you see actually taking this data, identifying trends and analyzing it, and then applying it to any sort of subsequent campaigns? Does it, you know, from a role standpoint, does that function lie within a media planner role, or does it actually lie within, let's say, a creative agency whereby this data is actually impacting not just the way media is planned, but the direction the creative can take as well?
Yeah, I'd like to take that one. I think that, you know, media planners, like I said, you know, we have a very specific skill set. And this kind of new, very disruptive approach is kind of scary, kind of weird. You know, if we feel, will it disintermediate us? Will it, you know, push the creative to the side? I think that what I hope you get from this panel is that it can affect everything you're doing. It's not that you're turning the keys to the kingdom, you know, over to the technologists. It's that now you guys can be empowered to just make sure that when you buy those 50 million impressions, when you start planning what your mobile strategy is, what your social strategy is, that there is a layer of data that you can apply to it and be smart on what you do. I think like I said, I think the baby steps in the next couple of years are going to be, you know, not necessarily you're going to learn what the platform is, or your creative agency is going to have to run a DMP, but I think just knowing that there's certain audience segments out there that just tend to work a lot better, maybe not chasing the DR metrics, but even showing attitudinal changes, showing brand metrics lift, and just being able to understand that you can send not just the creative tags over to the publisher, but you can send your audience tags over to the publisher at the same time, and just make sure that you're buying in the better way. And in terms of the creative piece too, the feedback loop that can be generated when you start to see what all these various attributes that you would never have thought about are trending well, can definitely inform your creative agency, how to skew those things, your measurement team, how to skew those things. So yes, don't let the data overtake what you're doing, just help it make you smarter. And just get a little bit more savvy on how you can get there. And there's certainly baby steps to that approach. And the folks at these companies can help you get there one step at a time.
Off over here. There we go. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, panel. Everyone, please give it up. Unfortunately, we've run out of time.